turkeys. We keep the males separate from the females, but we raise both the male turkeys and the female turkeys. And we raise turkeys for a company called Ferndale Market. So that's what you should look out for. If you want to buy one of our turkeys, you want to look for Ferndale Market.
Excellent. All right, John. Hello, Grant. Let's meet those turkeys, and you can tell us about them well, actually, before we go in the barn, why don't you guys tell us what you're wearing and why?
Yeah, so every time, so it's very important to keep our birds healthy. And one of the ways we do that is we always change our boots and our coveralls, and change into special boots and coveralls when we enter the barn. This way we keep any possibility of diseases that we might have picked up outside the barn, and we keep the inside of the barn clean. So it's called the Danish entry system, but anybody who comes in the barn has to put on boots and coveralls and wash their boots before they go into the barn. It just keeps our birds healthier that way.
Okay, excellent. And we want to keep those birds healthy. All right, let's go meet those birds. You can lead us
Okay.
in there and tell us what we're seeing.
Okay, we're going to open up the door here. Now, these birds are very curious, so they're going to come and say hi to us, but we'll walk in the barn now. So this is a modern turkey barn. And like I said, there's 8,000 male turkeys in here right now. Some of the neat equipment in here, as you can see, these are the waters. This is where the turkeys drink. Grant, can you show them how to use the water? So when the turkeys come up and peck at it, they push that back and forth, and a little bit of water comes out, and that's how they drink their water. And if you look behind the water, there's the feed lines back there, and that's where the turkeys eat. So these turkeys can eat all the time. They have access to feed and water 24/7.
So we have our first question. A student is curious, how much water does a turkey drink in one day?
That depends on how big they are and what the temperature is. Obviously, when it's warm out, they can drink more, and when it's cool out, they can drink less. But on average, a bird this size, and these birds weigh right around 30 pounds, they're probably drinking maybe a quart of water every day. But like I say, that's really temperature dependent. Just like you guys, when it's hot outside, you drink more water, and when it's not, you drink a little bit of less. But they can drink water anytime they want. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, here's a question from Ms. Stellmacher's class. Stellmaker, I'm sorry, I think I pronounced that wrong. And as we're answering this one, maybe if you would work to walk closer to the feeders so we can see those. But Ms. Stellmacher's students are curious, why are the turkeys white rather than brown?
So these turkeys are called domestic turkeys. And so they are white because many years ago, when people would eat a turkey, the turkeys with black feathers would leave little black marks on the skin of the bird. And so over that time, we've bred the turkeys to be white because it makes the bird, when you eat it, a little bit cleaner. It was always hard to get those dark feathers off, and it's much easier to pick the white feathers off. So it's just breeding over 50 to 60 years. We've just bred for the white color.
So would you say, John, most turkey farmers grow white turkeys? Are there any that have brown ones?
Yeah, you can buy, they're called heritage breeds, and there's other breeds of turkeys that still have the darker feathers. The meat is basically the same, but different breeds do have different feathers. It's just the birds that most people eat will come from a domestic, either a hybrid or a Nicholas breed, and those birds will always be white.
Okay, good to know. All right, there are several questions about what they eat and how much. So why don't you tell us about this feeding process for your turkeys?
Yeah, so these are the feed pins, and these are all automatic. So the birds can come along and eat this feed out, and it'll automatically refill. And the feed is changed many times throughout their lifetime from basically just like humans. When you're a baby, you eat baby food, and as you get older, you eat more solid food. And we change the feed about 8 or 10 times during their life, depending on how big the birds are. And it's a mixture of corn and soybeans, and it's specially made through a nutritionist to give them all the vitamins and nutrition they need at that stage in their life. So,
And how much, same question as the water, how much feed does these turkeys that we're looking at, how much do you think they eat in a day?
in a day, there again, it depends on how hungry you are. They can eat as much as they want, but in general, for every pound of turkey made, it takes about 2.2 pounds of feed. So when a turkey weighs 40 pounds, over the course of its life, it's eaten, 90 to 100 pounds of feed.
Okay, excellent. All right, Mrs. Dan Duran's first grade class in Granite Falls, they would like to know, how long does it take the turkeys to grow to the size that they are now? And then how long does it take until they're fully grown?
Okay, these are male turkeys, and we raise these until 19 weeks old. And at that point in time, they'll weigh about 45 pounds. The birds you're looking at in this barn right now are roughly 15 weeks old and weigh 30 pounds. So they've got about another month before they're going to go to market. They're actually going to go to market the first week in January. So, but now the hen turkeys, like the birds you're going to eat on Thanksgiving, they're going to weigh about 14 pounds, and that takes roughly 12 to 13 weeks to get to that weight. So the males and the females grow at very different rates, and that's why we keep them separate.
Okay, that's good to know. There's lots of questions. I see 4 right now on my screen, including Mrs. Carlson's class, wondering how old the turkeys live. So it kind of depends if they're hens or toms, males or females, and then what they're going to be raised for. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, when we send them to market, it can be at different ages, but a turkey in the wild, a wild turkey, or even a domestic turkey that we don't, slaughter for meat, maybe would live 2 years. But when we're producing them to slaughter them for meat, the males will go to about 19 weeks, and the females 14 weeks, maybe 17 weeks. We want them a little bit bigger.
Okay, here's another question. Mrs. Smith's class is curious why you only have male turkeys in this barn.
Mhm. Like I said, the hens are a much smaller bird, and honestly, there probably are a few hens in here because when they separate them between males and females, when they're very little poults or baby turkeys, they don't always get it 100%. But the female turkeys are just a lot smaller. So these feed lines, we raise them to a certain height so the birds can eat out of them, comfortably. For hens, they'd be a lot lower. So the feed and water are set to be at the right height for toms, and so you couldn't raise hens in here because it wouldn't be at the right height. So it's just much easier to keep them all the same size.
Okay, that makes sense. So Kara is doing a great job of showing us the barn. John, do you want to talk about some features of this barn? We can see some light coming in.
Yep.
Some of the students are curious if it's hot or cold in there, and how big is it? It looks really big, but we're curious if you have any specifics. So if you want, if there's any places to walk around or if just where we're at is a good viewpoint, you guys can decide.
Yeah. So we can look down this way here and look down the long end of the barn. This barn is 400 feet long and it's about 60 feet wide. So that's 24,000 square feet. That's roughly close to about half an acre of space. And if you look over here, we heat the barn in wintertime. Now, the birds provide enough heat to keep it warm most of the time, but if not, these boxes here are actually the heaters. And so we'll keep this barn at a comfortable temperature for the birds, which is right about 62 degrees now. When they're baby turkeys, we actually keep it about 95 degrees. But just like people, as you get older, you need different environments. We slowly cool the barn down. And actually, when they're fully grown, their most comfortable temperature will be about 55 degrees. So
Okay, excellent. There's a couple classes, Mrs. Dorn's, Mrs. Maple's class. They're curious if these turkeys stay inside or do they ever go outside?
So most turkeys are grown inside, and we do that to keep them safe because obviously predators like bald eagles and hawks would love to grab a baby turkey for lunch. So we keep them inside to keep them away from predators like wolves and hawks and coyotes and things like that. But we do grow turkeys outside sometimes during the summertime, and it doesn't matter if they're kept inside or outside, but some people prefer to have birds that were raised outside. So some people raise them outside, but the majority are usually kept inside.
Okay, good to know. All right, here, a kindergarten class in Marshall, Minnesota is curious about these turkeys. Where do they go to the bathroom and how do you keep them clean?
Well, they go to the bathroom on the ground here. Now, if you can see, this is the litter. This is what they're raised on. This is actually wood shavings. And here, I'll kick it around with my foot just a little bit. It's really deep and soft. And we till this up with a garden tiller all the time. So they can poop or go to the bathroom right on the ground. But it's one thing interesting about turkeys is that they don't urinate, they don't pee. They only produce solid poop. So it stays pretty dry and it gets mixed in with the litter and it doesn't cause them any problems.
Okay, excellent. Good to know. Thank you for that question from Marshall. So here's a question, and you mentioned this. I think there's 8,000 turkeys in this barn, right? I think I'm repeating that correctly.
Yep, 8,000 birds.
And where did they come from? Did you guys hatch them on your farm or did you get them from somewhere else?
Yeah, so these particular turkeys were hatched in Wilmer, Minnesota, which is in western part of the state, but there's hatcheries all over the country. So there are different types of turkey farms that raise birds that lay the eggs. And so the eggs go to a hatchery and they're put into an incubator and it takes about 28 days for the egg to go from a fertilized egg to become a baby turkey, which is called a poult. And then the hatcheries, they separate them between males and females and give them any of their vaccinations that they need or anything else, and then they will ship them to our farm. So it's about a 3-hour drive from the hatchery to our farm, and we'll get them at less than 1 day old. So they're hatched on Tuesday night. We'll get them Wednesday morning.
Okay, so Mrs. Miller's class in Brooklyn Center is curious, or they're first graders. Do you have any baby turkeys? We don't see them in this barn, but do you have any on your farm right now?
We don't have any right now. We're actually getting baby turkeys next week. A week from today, actually, we're getting a new flock of baby turkeys. I have a total of 5 barns we use. One is a brood barn. That's where we keep the baby turkeys. And we're constantly getting birds in there. And then at 4 weeks, we move them to barns like this so they have more room to grow out. So every about 6 weeks, we get a new flock of turkeys that are a day old.
Okay, so we have a bunch of questions about the turkeys and kind of the parts. For example, Mrs. Maples, I think they're kindergartners in White Bear Lake. They want to know if your turkeys have bumpy things on their chins. So
Well,
I don't know if Kara and Grant and John, if you guys are able to get us some close-ups and maybe tell us about the different parts of these turkeys and what makes them unique.
okay, we're gonna try to bring one over here. Here we go. Hey, yeah, you calm down. Grant, if you wanna point out some of the parts of the turkey here. So show on the neck the caruncles. So those are the red lumps on their neck, and that's just a lot of veins and blood flowing through there, and it keeps them cool. And when they're looking for a mate, or the two males are trying to fight, this will get bright red. And that's when they strut too. Now this up here, Grant, point to the snood. That is the snood. As you can see, it's retracted right now, but when he gets a little angry or he wants to strut, this snood will come down like that over his neck. And then the wattle. A wattle is this kind of the neck piece right here. And as you can see, it kind of waddles around or whatever, but that's called the wattle. And here's their ear. Turkeys have ears on the side of their head. They don't have ears like we do. They're internal, but that's their ear. And you can, of course, see the eye and the beak.
Wow, that is awesome. Good camera work, Kara, and thanks, Grant, for your help in pointing out all of those parts. There's a couple questions, John, about the turkey feathers. So, are their feathers similar to other birds, and is there any use for those feathers? If you could talk a little bit about the turkey feathers, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's another reason when we raise all white turkeys, because the feathers are used. There's actually companies that can take the feathers, and they're not like goose feathers that are used in pillows. Actually, sometimes they're ground up and used in feed or fertilizer because they have a lot of calcium in them. But arrows, if you are involved in archery, I know that turkey feathers make good fletching on arrows, so sometimes they're used for that. A lot of Native Americans use them in tribal rituals and for headdresses and things like that for ornamentation. But primarily they're used as a feed ingredient or fertilizer because they're really not soft enough for like the goose down feathers that you see there. But every part of the turkey is used in some way.
Okay, good to know. All right, we've had a couple questions. Students are curious if turkeys sleep standing up, or how do they sleep in this barn?
I think if you look, well, let's turn the camera around here. You can see a few have sat down. And so yeah, at nighttime, and we come in here, the lights go off and the birds sit down and they'll actually tuck their head underneath their wing, and that's how they sleep.
Okay. There's also some questions about kind of the behavior of turkeys. So, do they fight? When they get scared, what happens? Are they pretty calm? If you could maybe talk about, how do they behave? Are they like kids or different?
Yeah, we always say turkeys are like big kids. They do sometimes have little fights, but nothing major. That's another reason we keep the males and the females separate, because sometimes the males and the females don't get along the best. But in general, at this age, they get along pretty good and they don't really fight. As long as they have good access to feed and water and they're comfortable, they have no reason to be, upset or anything, and so they stay pretty calm.
Okay, excellent. Okay, Mr. Rorigan's class in Erskine, Minnesota. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but they're curious if these turkeys can fly. And there was another question we had that they're wondering how fast can turkeys run?
So yeah, turkeys cannot. They can kind of fly. Wild turkeys can kind of fly, but only if for short distances. And now, a domestic turkey, because they've been bred to produce so much meat, they have a heavier breast meat on them, so they really don't fly. They can jump, and you can't see it here, but occasionally we have this wire on top of these water lines here, and this is up here because when they're little, they'll come up and they'll jump up and try to roost on this line. So they can jump up, 2 or 3 feet and roost and do things like that. But the bigger they get, the less they do that. Wild turkeys can fly, maybe 20, 30 feet short distances, but they can't fly like an eagle, like up in the sky like that. As far as how fast they are, I think wild turkeys can go up to 20 miles per hour. These guys here, probably not that fast, but when they are when they're being chased by somebody, they can go pretty fast. And if we want to catch a turkey, they seem to run pretty fast to get away from us.
Okay, we had some very observant students that noticed there was kind of like a box. And they called it a box, but it's kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. I think Karis found it. They're curious, or maybe a cart. They're curious what that is for. Is it just a toy for the turkeys to play on?
This is actually a scale. So in order to know how big our turkey's on, we have a scale like this, and it's connected to a computer. And over the course of a day, a whole bunch of turkeys will get up and stand on there, and then the computer can measure how much they weigh and send that to my phone or my office computer, and it keeps track of the weight of the birds. So we know how big they are. And if we suddenly see the birds aren't gaining weight like we want them to, maybe we will check on things to make sure they're not sick. So it's a method for us just to keep track of the health of the turkeys and know how big they are.
Okay, excellent. So that sounds like some
So
technology that a turkey can hop on there and then it sends a message to your phone. Is there some other technologies or tools that you use to help take care of these turkeys?
yeah, sure. So we've come a long way in technology. Like I said, these barns are all computer controlled. So if Kara can look at the side curtains over here, this one's just a little bit open now. I don't know if you guys can see that, but these curtains on the side of the barn actually open and close depending on the temperature, and that's all based on a computer system. So as it gets warmer out, the side curtains will fall down and allow a lot more air in and cool the barn off. And the lights and everything else are also controlled by a computer, and so are the heaters. And now over here, my son Grant has gotten out our cart that we use in the barn. So we have these battery operated carts that we drive through the barns. Go ahead, Grant, drive down the barn. And we use this just to check the birds and pick up anything, carry our tools around with us. And now, because of, oh, there he goes. Another thing we use is actually robots in the barn, and they look very similar to this cart, but they're controlled by, they're remotely controlled, but we have, whoa, but we have robots that can patrol the barns too, and they just monitor the temperature and keep the birds up and moving, keep them exercised, and they could spread vaccines. They could, pick up any dead turkeys we might have, things like that. And now, from a biosecurity standpoint, we are also using lasers in some of the barns, and we keep lasers around the outside of the barns, and they just kind of project a laser beam all around the outside of the barn, and that scares away those ducks and geese I talked about that can spread disease to turkeys. So there's all sorts of different technologies that are used in the turkey barns nowadays.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks to Grant for showing us how the cart works. We have a couple questions about how, let's see, how can you tell, like, if you can weigh them, but how else can you tell if a turkey is healthy and growing?
Usually that's why we take that cart and we drive through the barns twice or three times a day just to check on the general health of the turkeys. And we can tell just from experience if the turkeys are healthy. And Kara can look at the birds now, and I'm going to make a noise here. How you can see them kind of running away from me. I just made a clicking noise, and that kind of gets them a little excited. But if they had not moved when I did that, I would say maybe they're not feeling the best because they didn't want to move around too much. So just their general attitude, just like you can tell if you're sick, if you can tell if they're, in a good mood or a bad mood, based on their activity and if they're, watching you or following you around. So that's how we mainly tell, but we also monitor how much feed and water they drink. And if we see that they're not drinking as much feed in a day or water, then we kind of use that as a clue to maybe look in there and see if they're maybe not feeling the best.
Okay, excellent. So this is from, oh, I just lost it. From a first grade class in Mankato, Mrs. Armstrong's class, and several other people have asked this. Do these turkeys gobble? And also, do any of them have names?
Obviously, with 8,000 birds, we don't name them specifically, but they do gobble. And it's hard to get them to gobble on cue, but sometimes, they'll gobble back and forth all the time. Here, we're going to try to make them gobble here quick. Grant is going to make a noise. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but they do gobble.
Oh, it's hard for us to hear because
Yeah.
the microphone is on you, but
Yep.
we believe you. I believe that they are gobbling. Here's a question from Mrs. Vogel's class, and this I think is a response to what you were just talking about. If one of your turkeys isn't feeling well or is sick, does it usually spread to the others? And if they are sick, is there a turkey doctor? Mrs. White's class is curious about that.
Yeah. So turkeys, well, like I say, when they get sick, we'll notice it because they're not eating food or water. We won't notice one bird getting sick probably, but if it's two or if one bird gets sick, just like in a classroom at school, when one kid gets sick, it usually spreads to the rest of them. And so with monitoring their feed and their water and how they're looking, we can catch that really quickly. And yeah, we do work with a veterinarian that's a specific veterinarian that just works with turkeys. And no, normally I know when they're getting sick or whatever, and then we can find out what to do for them. Either we give them aspirin, or if we need to give antibiotics or things like that, we'll do that. But if I need extra help, I can call my veterinarian at any time, and then she can come out and diagnose what the problem is, so we can get them treated and healthy as soon as possible.
Okay. Mrs. Venstra, second graders in Springfield, Minnesota are curious. You mentioned you have 5 barns. How many turkeys do you have currently on your farm in all of those 5 barns?
Well, we have a capacity because when we raise the female turkeys, we raise more of them because they're a little smaller. So my capacity is right around 100,000 turkeys, but that depends on their size too. And we have baby turkeys because they're smaller. We probably have a little bit more. So my brood barn can hold 25,000, and then my 2 male barns hold 8,000 each, and my 2 female barns can hold roughly 20 to 25,000 each.
So are those
But
barns similar to this one in size and scale, or are they smaller, bigger, and look different?
yeah, the hen barns are a little different because they're older barns. They're actually 500 feet long, where the tom barns are 400 feet long. And then my brood barn or my nursery barn is a lot smaller because obviously the turkeys are much smaller, so the barn is more fitting to their size. So that's only 200 feet long.
Okay, interesting. There's a few questions about how much it costs to raise a turkey. And when we buy them in the store, is that the same price? So I don't know, John, if you want to get into some of the economics or the money involved, or if you could give us kind of a summary, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, it varies, obviously. Our biggest expense or the biggest cost in raising a turkey, just like the biggest probably expense in raising a person, is food. And so let's say roughly it costs us about $1 to $1.20 per pound to raise a turkey. About 70% of that is going to be the feed cost. And that can vary because obviously the cost of corn and soybeans can change from time to time, but that's the major cost. And then labor and electricity and insurance and all the other things make up that other 30%. But the vast majority of the cost is the feed cost. What's coming into these feed pans is what is our main cost in that $1.20 per pound.
And so a few students are curious if you raise turkeys all year, or is it just around Thanksgiving?
No, we raise turkeys all year. Like these birds here I think you can see the big one on the screen there. He's going to go to market in January, and he's not going to be the bird you'd eat at Thanksgiving. He's going to be a bird that if you went to a Subway store or you got a turkey sandwich at school, that's what he's going to be made into. So no, we raise turkeys year round. And like I say, we raise them for different reasons. During the holiday rush or Thanksgiving rush, a lot of people will raise the small female girl turkeys for the Thanksgiving rush. But over the course of the year, it depends on what's going on, but we'll raise different sized turkeys for different markets.
Okay, interesting. All right, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to get into some of the questions about your favorites, John. So the first question is, what is your favorite part about raising turkeys?
I think my favorite part about being a farmer or raising turkeys is that we get to see the whole growth cycle from 1 day old all the way to market. So you get to see all your work amount to something, and we're really proud that we're able to feed a whole bunch of people, and we're really happy that we get to be the centerpiece for your Thanksgiving meal.
Okay, we have a couple questions for Grant, and Grant does not have a microphone, so he's going to have to, or John can just answer for him. So,
Okay.
or yeah, or if you want to
Well,
switch the headset, you can. We'll love to hear Grant's voice. All right, Grant, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, what is your favorite thing to do on the farm?
Um,
You can pick a couple if it's hard to narrow down to just one. Is it driving the cart? I mean, you look pretty good at that task.
hmm.
All right, you think about that one. We'll go to the next one. Do you want to be a turkey farmer when you get older?
Probably.
Probably. Okay, cool. What's the hardest thing about raising turkeys?
Probably all the fixing things.
Oh, like what kind of things do you get to fix?
Big water spills.
And do those usually happen like inside the barn or is that outside?
Inside. Sometimes the water lines will leak and then you need to come in and clean it up.
Yeah, I bet that would make a big mess. Okay, so what's your favorite way to eat turkey?
Having it smoked
Ooh.
freshly right off the smoker.
Okay, so this is Mrs. Vogel's class in Cleveland. Grant, they're curious, how old are you? And then also, when did you start working on the farm?
I'm almost 11 and I started, I'm guessing, around 5.
Okay, so you're like a veteran already. This is from Mr. Lufquist's class. They're curious, what is the most entertaining thing that turkeys do?
Probably when they strut.
Okay, so tell us what that looks like.
See right here how its tail feathers are fanning out?
Oh yeah.
That, but bigger.
Okay, and then I can see in that one the snoot is hanging down low, so it must have yeah, they kind of get like that. Okay, awesome. That's some great camera work. Thanks, Grant. If you want to give the microphone back to your dad, we have a couple more questions for him. And you guys, I know that there are so many questions that we just are not going to have time to ask. So thank you for putting them in. I know the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association has an awesome website that has more information, and our Minnesota Ag in the Classroom website has some turkey information too. But John, what's your favorite way to eat turkey?
I think I'll agree with Grant. You know, I really like smoked turkey. And then anytime it's fresh off the oven or when it's nice and hot.
Okay, and what is one thing that you wish everyone would know about Minnesota turkey growers?
I think it's that we care about what we do for a living and that we take the best care of the turkeys we possibly can, and we're really proud to be able to provide, you know, the state of Minnesota and the world a really nutritious and healthy product.
Well, that is awesome. And we are thankful that you're willing to do that because I don't know about the students joining, but I am definitely looking forward to having some turkey at my Thanksgiving dinner in just 2 days. So Grant, John, Kara, thank you guys so much. Zimmerman Family Turkey Farm near Northfield. It was a pleasure to visit you and learn all about turkeys growing in Minnesota. And I don't know if you guys caught it at the beginning, but John said if you see Ferndale turkeys in your grocery store, they could have come from this farm. So we are so thankful. Thank you to all of the classrooms who joined us today and all of the fantastic questions. Like I said, I know I didn't get to ask all of them, but thank you for submitting those. And if you guys liked this virtual field trip, we have another one planned for December. So on December 16th, we are going to travel virtually to a dairy farm and see how cows are grown and raised and how they provide milk to us. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great Thanksgiving.